Most people think boredom is harmless, a minor irritation, something you fix by picking up your phone or turning on a show. But the ancient Stoics saw something far more dangerous lurking inside it. They believed that boredom was not a problem of having nothing to do. It was a problem of not knowing who you are. And that distinction changes everything. Seneca wrote that the restless person who keeps moving from place to place is not seeking adventure. They are fleeing themselves. He described people of his era who would travel to distant cities, then find the same emptiness waiting for them when they arrived. The scenery changed. The feeling did not. Sound familiar? We live in an age of infinite stimulation, and yet boredom has never been more widespread. People scroll for hours, not because the content is satisfying, but because stopping feels unbearable. That unbearable feeling, that crawling discomfort when nothing is demanding your attention, that is exactly what Seneca was pointing at 2,000 years ago. He called it the disease of a mind that cannot rest with itself. Marcus Aurelius wrestled with the same thing. Even as Emperor of Rome, surrounded by spectacle and power, he returned again and again in his private journal to the question of what actually deserves his attention. He was not immune to distraction. He was fighting against it. And the fact that he had to fight tells you something important. Boredom is not a modern invention born from smartphones and streaming services. It is an ancient human condition. And the Stoics spent their lives developing weapons against it. The first weapon is understanding what boredom actually is. Here is the Stoic diagnosis, and it is blunt. Boredom is not the absence of things to do. It is the absence of a reason to do anything. When you have no clear values, no guiding purpose, no sense of what actually matters to you, then every available activity feels equally hollow. Nothing rises above the noise because you have not decided what deserves to. Epictetus taught that the root of most human suffering is misplaced attention. We constantly reach for things outside ourselves, praise, pleasure, novelty, distraction, while neglecting the one thing we actually control, our own inner life. Boredom, in his framework, is what happens when you have outsourced your sense of meaning entirely to external circumstances. When the circumstances run dry, you feel empty. But notice what that reveals. If you can only feel engaged when something external is stimulating you, then you are not living your life. Your life is living you. You are being carried by whatever current happens to be flowing, entertainment, social media, other people's urgency. The Stoics called this being enslaved to appearances, and they considered it one of the most undignified states a human being could inhabit. Marcus Aurelius made a practice of stripping away distractions deliberately, not as punishment, but as training. He wanted to know what remained when the noise was removed. What he found, consistently, was the raw material of his own character, his values, his capacity for reason, his ability to choose. And that discovery was not boring, it was clarifying in a way that no external stimulus could replicate. The Stoics were not against enjoyment. They were against the desperate, anxious seeking of enjoyment that signals you cannot stand your own company. That desperation, they said, is where the real problem lives. Stoicism is often misunderstood as cold and joyless, a philosophy of gritting your teeth through life. That is completely wrong. The Stoics valued joy deeply. They simply believed that real joy, the kind that does not evaporate when the distraction ends, comes from one place, from being genuinely present with what is in front of you. And the ability to do that is a skill that requires training. Seneca wrote that you should practice periods of deliberate simplicity, not forever, not as an ideology, but as an exercise. Spend a day with no entertainment, sit with silence, walk without your phone, eat simply. The point was not deprivation. The point was to discover what your mind does when it is not being fed. Most people, the first time they try this, experience anxiety. Their thoughts race. They feel an urgent need to check something, do something, fill the space. That anxiety is information. It tells you how dependent you have become on constant stimulation. But if you sit with it, instead of running from it, something interesting happens. The anxiety gradually quiets, and underneath it, you begin to notice things, the quality of light in the room, the texture of your own thoughts, a problem you have been avoiding, a desire you had forgotten. This is what Marcus Aurelius was doing in those private journal entries. He was sitting with himself on purpose, practicing the presence that would make him a better emperor, a better thinker, a better human being. He was not waiting to feel inspired before he engaged. He was training himself to find meaning in the ordinary because he understood that most of life is ordinary, and a person who can only feel alive in extraordinary moments will spend most of their life feeling half dead. The Stoics were obsessed with attention, not in the modern productivity sense of hacking your focus, but in the deeper sense of choosing what your mind dwells on. Epictetus was particularly sharp on this point. He observed that people will guard their money carefully, lock their doors, hire guards for their valuables, and yet they will let anyone walk into their mind and leave a mess. Every notification, every piece of gossip, every trivial drama, every hour of mindless content, all of it gets invited in without any examination. He called this a failure of philosophy. Not a minor one, a fundamental one, because what you repeatedly attend to becomes what you are. If your attention is scattered and frantic, your character will follow. If your attention is disciplined and purposeful, your life will reflect that too. The antidote to boredom from a Stoic perspective is not more stimulation, it is better attention. And better attention starts with asking a simple question before you reach for distraction. What am I actually trying to avoid right now? Because boredom almost always has something hiding behind it. Sometimes it is a difficult conversation you're postponing. Sometimes it is a goal you have set, but not pursued. Sometimes it is grief or uncertainty or fear dressed up as mild restlessness. The Stoics believed in facing those things directly rather than drowning them in noise. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should ask yourself, in any moment, is what I am doing right now necessary? Not pleasurable, not comfortable, but necessary. That is a harder question than it sounds. It cuts through a tremendous amount of what passes for busyness in modern life, and it leaves behind something genuinely worth doing, something worth your real attention, something that will not leave you feeling hollow when it is over. Here is the final Stoic teaching on this subject, and it might be the most important one. The goal is not to eliminate boredom through willpower or clever routines. The goal is to transform your relationship with ordinary moments so thoroughly that boredom loses its power over you. Seneca captured it plainly when he wrote that the wise person finds enough in themselves to occupy their mind at all times, not because they have special gifts or unusual talent, but because they have done the work of knowing themselves. When you know your values, when you have a clear sense of what kind of person you want to be, when you have questions you are genuinely curious about and work that actually matters to you, then silence is not empty. It is full. Every ordinary moment becomes an opportunity to practice something, patience, observation, gratitude, reason. Marcus Aurelius found this in the smallest details of his day. He wrote about how even the way bread cracks in an oven has its own beauty if you are paying attention. He was not being poetic for its own sake. He was training himself to see the richness that is already present in a life hidden in plain sight beneath the noise. That capacity to find something real and engaging in the ordinary texture of existence, that is what the Stoics called living wide awake. Not chasing constant excitement, but being genuinely present. Not filling every silence, but being at home in it. This is not easy. It is a practice, and like any practice, it rewards consistent effort over time. If this kind of thinking speaks to you, there is more where this came from. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and keep coming back. Each one is another step in the same direction toward a life lived with more clarity, more calm, and more intention,